Therefore, my persecutors will stumble and will not prevail. They will be greatly ashamed, for they will not prosper. Their everlasting confusion will never be forgotten. Gustavo gave his heart to Jesus and was baptized at the age of 34. I was looking for a cure, for someone to help me feel better, he said. In church, I found out that I'm God's son. I was freed by his life. After baptism, he found a video presentation about Christian meditation and decided to try it. The technique, he said, mirrored Eastern meditation, but instead of repeating the phrase in the dead Indian language, he repeated words from the Bible. The results shocked him. I lost control of my mind, and it went blank like before, he said. I felt an energy surging through my body, and I heard voices telling me what to do. One voice said, tell other people to meditate. Another voice said, give money to the temple. A third voice said, meditate in the name of Ricardo to help Ricardo receive energy. He didn't know anyone named Ricardo. Gustavo was frozen, unable to move, until he came out of the trance. Afterward, several old friends told Gustavo that voices had instructed them during their own meditations to invite him to meditate like before. Gustavo resolved never to meditate that way again. Instead, he said, he chooses to read the Bible and meditate on his word, not doing Eastern-style meditation. That is a dangerous place. God is not guiding that kind of meditation. He also is convinced that yoga is a tool of the devil. With yoga, you feel good and you don't need to read the Bible or have Jesus in your life, he said. You think that spirits are working within you and that is enough. Today, Gustavo is 40 and works as a literature evangelist and massage therapist in Asuncion. He also is an active participant of a community outreach center attached to the Nueva Saconia Seventh-day Adventist Church, a 2016 13th Sabbath project. He tells people in the neighborhood that drugs and meditation are not the answer. Getting high and meditating feels good for a while, but then you feel worse, he said. The only solution is Christ. Only when you pray do you feel better and have real peace. Thank you for your 13th Sabbath offering in first quarter 2016 that helped plant the Nueva Saconia Seventh-day Adventist Church in Asuncion, Paraguay. Thank you for your mission offerings that bring hope to thousands of people like Gustavo around the world. Thank you.
Next, please.
I have to go urgently to choosing a job or career.
What an important destination. Do you have anything in mind?
Well, I want a job that allows me to be important and make a lot of money.
What is your calling? That is, what areas of work motivate you to dedicate your time and effort?
It doesn't matter, as long as I get prestige and money. I want to be very important and recognized, and that my hours of work be very well remunerated.
The first job the Bible records is that of Adam in the Garden of Eden. God put him there to cultivate and care for it. God has put skills in each one of us so we could do excellent work. A job well done and useful to society is very important. The job that you are going to choose should give you satisfaction of a duty fulfilled and be an activity that you love.
What is it worth to be useful to society and work a lot, but earn only little money? I know that all work has its importance, but people respect those who are successful in their job.
Some people have come to take that same bus and then have discovered that when they arrive at their destination, they did not find what they were expecting. They returned to get on the right bus, but lost valuable time.
That's right. I have returned here to take the right bus. You are young, and I must advise you that the decisions we make are like buses that we take to one destination or another. It is better to pray to the Lord so that He may guide you where He wants you to go in relation to your career or job.
I have come to this place many times. I have learned that although the decisions are small, just like the just like of the King Rehoboam, who choose to listen to his friends and not to people with experience, the results can enormous and affect us for years to come.
I have also returned here to take correct buses. Because of bad decisions, I spent many years of my life in jail. Now I am free and I have met Christ. I consult him in every decision I make so that he may lead me on the right path.
Well, thank you very much. With all this good advice, I believe I have learned quite a bit. It is time to share what I have learned during the week and in this program. We will divide into our classes. Before we do so, we'll have the prayer on behalf of lesson study. May all teachers please stand. I'll ask Brother Stephen Boyce to pray on behalf of lesson study.
Discussion leaders, time to start wrapping up. We can find hundreds of stories in the Bible about people who made good and not so good decisions. In each one of these stories, we can see the result that was associated with the decision. In our lives, we also have to make hundreds of decisions, large or small, according to our expectations. The decisions to give our lives to Christ is and always will be the best of all. So, starting from here, and with life being a journey, Jesus continues to be in charge of giving us the signs we need to know where to go. At this time, we'll have an item of special music by Brother Michael Taylor. How fitting that he should play wonderful words of life, because as we close our Sabbath school this morning, we're going to look at 4 sets of wonderful words. And these are signs we can find in the Bible to guide us along life's journey. Stop. It says, "Be still and know that I am God." For the U-turn, Deuteronomy chapter 4, verses 30 and 31 says, when you are in distress, and all these things come upon you in the latter days, when you turn to the Lord your God and obey his voice, he will not forsake you. The one way. No one can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he will be loyal to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and mammon. And the final one, no parking. Blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor stands in the path of sinners, nor sits in the seat of the scornful. Do not park there. Psalms chapter 1 and verse 1. As we close our Sabbath school, we are going to sing the hymn 691, and at this time we will collect our birthday and thank you offering. You can come right up, the offering plate is at the front. 691. I remember we are thanking God for taking us through the first quarter, January, February, and March. Start. 691. Let's stand, please.
Let us sing. Lead me, Lord. Lead me in thy righteousness. May thy way plain before thy face. For it is thou, Lord, Lord only, that makes me dwell in safety. Lead me, Lord, lead me in thy righteousness. May thy way plain before thy face. For it is thou, Lord, thou, Lord only, that makest me dwell in safety. Please be seated. Good morning, everyone. A pleasant Sabbath to all of you. Here I have a report for Ingathering Campaign 2019. We would have collected a total of $4,353.95. A number of classes would have passed their goal. Class number 1 had a total of $1,288.55. I barely hear you, man. Yeah. Class number 2, $844.45. Class number 3, $1,205. Class number 4, $267. The senior youth, $151. The children division would have collected $449.95. and the singing band on their first week collected $33. Now, there were a number of gatherers who had gone over $100, 5 males and 8 females. We have Brother Ainsley Baker, Brother Emerson Graham, Sister Erla Brom, Sister Destiny Edwards, Sister Yvonne Griffith, Sister Margarita Sobers, Brother Adrian Richards, Sister Aretha Springer, Brother Lionel Sobers, Sister Deborah Edwards, Sister Winifred Rock, Brother Stephen Boyce, Brother Cyril Belgrave, Sister Armantha Belgrave. Those were the members here who would have gone over $100. Now, we would like to certainly thank all of our members who would have participated in the Gathering Campaign 2019. It is over. Next year, we look forward for next year where we will, put in a much more aggressive effort in the campaign. But we would like to thank all of you, and to God be the glory for your efforts which you would have made this year. Now, in Gathering 2019 is finished, and we are focusing on the Good News Gospel Explosion, which is starting on the 19th of May. The 19th of May. Now, the night services will start at 7 p.m. On Sabbaths, the service will be starting at 9 a.m. It will be conducted by Pastor Dr. Claudius Morgan. Pastor Morgan has so far led 20,000 persons to Christ and established 15 churches in the Caribbean and North America. He is one of the few evangelists in the world church who effectively combines singing and preaching in his ministry. And so he'll be here with us at the Oldbury Seventh Adventist campsite in Oldbury, St. Philip, where we will have 5 weeks of that program, the Good News Gospel Explosion. Now, we have a few weeks to work with. We have a number of flyers to distribute. We also have some lessons also to distribute within the time leading up to the 19th of May. I am hoping and praying that we will all come together. We will be using our groups and group leaders to target those persons in our locality. Please remember that we will also be endeavoring to invite them over to our Mother's Day program, to the various programs that we have at our church. Any social program, we will be looking to invite our contacts to come over to be with us, so that on the 19th we will have a section of people here who we would have made contact with. I hope and pray that as we press on, that God will be with us. Now, normally we would have had our personal ministries meeting on Sunday, the second Sunday in the month. There's an event going on which will affect that particular program, so we will postpone that program, that meeting for this month. But it does not mean that we will forget about the Good News Gospel Ministries. And so we will redouble our efforts next Sabbath so that we can make contact with those in our locality around our church. Let us stand for prayer. Father, you have guided us, you have guided us through this week. We thank you for those who would have had birthdays during the month of January, February, and March. I pray that you will continue to bless each and every one of us as we continue, as we go along the Christian journey. I pray that you will keep us focused on the fact that you are coming soon, or coming for a prepared people. We need to preach this everlasting gospel so that it can be a witness. Bless us all. Energize us as we continue along the Christian pathway. Bless us as we await your word from your manservant here today. May your Holy Spirit rest upon our hearts. May he bring us calmness. May he bring us obedience for Christ's sake. Amen.
I want to thank all those who took part in this morning's Sabbath school, and this message is for the church board members. We have an emergency board meeting at this moment in the vestry. All church board members.
Father's love for us, how vast beyond all measure, that he should give his only Son and make a wretch his treasure. How great the pain of searing loss, the Father turns his face away, as wounds which mar the chosen one bring many sons to glory. Behold the man upon the cross, my sin upon his shoulder. Ashamed, I hear my mocking voice call out among the scoffers. It was my sin that held him there until it was accomplished. His dying breath has brought me to life. I know that it is finished. Oh, oh. I will not boast in anything, no gifts, no power, no wisdom, but I will boast in Jesus Christ, his death and resurrection. Why should I gain from his reward? I cannot give an answer, but this I know with all my heart: his wounds have paid my ransom. Why should I gain from his reward? I cannot give an answer, but this I know with all my heart: his wounds have paid my ransom.
Pleasant Salve, everyone. The person who is assigned to be doing our sanctuation, she's actually in church for me as we speak downstairs. So instead, we're just going to sing a couple of songs. We're going to start with number 337, number 337. Redeemed, how I love to proclaim it. Redeemed by the blood of the Lamb. Redeemed through his infinite mercy. His child and forever I am. Number 337. Okay, that's 338. Let's go. Redeemed, how I love to proclaim it. Redeemed by the blood of the Lamb. Redeemed through his infinite mercy, his child, and forever I am. Let's sing redeemed. Redeemed, redeemed, redeemed by the blood of the Lamb. Redeemed, how I love to proclaim it, his child, and forever. Oh, I think of my blessed Redeemer. I think of my blessed Redeemer. I think of him all the day long. So I sing, for I cannot be silent. His love is the theme of my song. redeemed, redeemed, redeemed by the blood of the Lamb. Redeemed, how I love to proclaim it, his child and forever. I know I shall see in his beauty. I know I shall see in his beauty. Who lovingly guardeth my footsteps, who lovingly guardeth my footsteps and gives me songs in the night. Redeemed, redeemed, redeemed by the blood of the Lamb. Redeemed, how I love to proclaim it, his child and for. Let's do that chorus again. Redeemed, 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 redeemed by the blood of the Lamb. Redeemed, how I love to proclaim it, his child and forever I have. Brother Taylor played a song earlier. Ironically, I had a song chosen for whatever reason. Number 286, number 286, Wonderful Words of Life. Sing them over again to me. Wonderful words of life. Let me more of their beauty see. That sing them over. Sing them over again to me. Wonderful words of life. Let me more of their beauty see. Wonderful words of life. Life and beauty, teach me faith and duty. Beautiful words, wonderful words, wonderful words of life. Beautiful words, wonderful words of life. Oh, Christ the Blessed One, Christ the Blessed to all, wonderful words of life. Sinnerless to the loving call, wonderful words of life. All so freely given, wooing us to heaven. Wonderful words, wonderful words of life. Beautiful words, wonderful words, wonderful words. So we're echoing the sweet gospel call. Sweetly echo the gospel call. Wonderful words of life. Offering pardon. With wonderful words of life. Beautiful words, beautiful words, wonderful words, wonderful words of life. Beautiful words, wonderful words, wonderful words of life. We're going back to the section of Glory and Praise, number 246. Number 246, worthy, worthy is the Lamb that was slain. Worthy, worthy is the Lamb. Worthy, worthy is the that was slain. Glory, hallelujah. Praise him, hallelujah. Glory, hallelujah. To the Lamb. Savior, let thy kingdom come. Savior, let thy kingdom come. Now the power of sin consume. Bring thy blessed millennium, Holy Lamb. Glory, hallelujah. Praise him, hallelujah. Glory, hallelujah. To the Lamb. Thus may we each moment feel, love him, serve him, praise him still, till we all the Lamb. Glory, hallelujah. Glory, hallelujah, to the Lamb. Oh, worship the King in the beauty of holiness. Bow down before him, his glory proclaim. With call of obedience and incense of lowliness, kneel and adore him. The Lord is his name. Lo, at his feet lay the burden of carefulness. High on his heart he will bear it for thee. Comfort thy sorrows and answer thy prayerfulness. God in thy steps as may bless for thee. Oh, fear not to enter, fear not to enter his course in the slenderness of the poem thou wouldst reckon as thine. Truth in its beauty and love in its tenderness, these are the offering to lay on his shrine. These though we bring, these though we bring them in trembling and fearfulness, he will accept for the name that is dear. Mornings of joy give for evenings of tearfulness. Trust for all trembling and hope for our faith.
Let us sing. Number 10, come Christians, join to sing. Hallelujah, amen. It's good to be in the house of the Lord on this Sabbath day. Let us raise our voices and sing lustily this song. Come Christian, join to sing. Hallelujah, amen.
Come, Christians, join to sing. Hallelujah, amen. Love, praise to Christ our King. Hallelujah, amen. Let all with hearts and voice before His throne rejoice. Praises His gracious choice. Hallelujah, amen. Come, lift your heart on high. Hallelujah, amen. Let praises fill the skies. Hallelujah, amen. He is our guide and friend. To us He condescend. His love shall never end. Hallelujah, amen. Praise yet, O Christ, again. Hallelujah, amen. Life shall not end astray. Hallelujah, amen. On heaven's blissful shore, His goodness we'll adore, singing forevermore. Hallelujah, amen.
Let us sing on that song. Number 1-5. My Maker and my King, to Thee, my all I owe. Thy sovereign bounty is the spring whence all my blessings flow. Thy sovereign bounty is the spring when all my blessings flow. Let us sing.
My Maker and my King, to Thee my all I owe. Thy sovereign bounty is the spring whence all my blessings flow. Thy sovereign bounty is the spring when all my blessings flow. The creature of Thy hand, on Thee alone I live. My God, Thy benefits demand more praise than I can give. My God, Thy benefits demand more praise than I can give.
Or stop.
We now turn to our introit song, Sabbath Rest, as we prepare for the entrance of the platform personnel. Please stand. We come to head aside. We leave our cares behind. Leave our cares behind. On this day of Sabbath rest. On this day of Sabbath rest. On this your holy day.
On this your holy day, we come to give you prayer. On this day of Sabbath rest.
Let's sing Sabbath rest.
Sabbath rest, holy rest.
On the day he set aside, hallowed, blessed, and sanctified, Sabbath rest, holy rest. Out of all the weak, the blessed, we have come to be blessed on this day of Sabbath rest.
Sing that again.
Let's sing it again. We cares aside, we leave our cares behind.
Let us sing.
On this day of
Sabbath rest. On this your holy day, we come to give you praise. On this day of Sabbath rest. Sabbath rest, holy rest. On the day set aside, hallowed, blessed, and sanctified, Sabbath rest, holy rest. Out of the weak, the best, we have come to be blessed on this day of Sabbath rest.
Can you be seated?
Good morning. Good morning, church. These are the announcements for April 13th, 2019. From Egypt to Canaan. That's the topic for our AY service this evening. Join us as we take an exciting journey through time and trace the travels of ancient Egypt and learn valuable spiritual lessons that can help us in our own walk with God. So plan to be here and come and be blessed. There will be no Sunday night service tomorrow night. And we will have Wednesday night prayer service at 7:30 p.m. as well as Friday night Bible study at 7:30 p.m. Camp meeting will commence on April the 17th at the Oldbury campsite. And we ask to remember the Good News Gospel Explosion, which will be commencing on the 19th of May at the Oldbury campsite. Sister Valine Payne would like to meet with the executive of the Women's Ministries immediately after divine service. We're also reminded that there will be a technology workshop on Good Friday, and begins at 10. We will now have a promotion by the community services leader.
Yeah, thank you, Brother Ryan. And good morning, church. Happy Sabbath. Amen. April, May, June. Be prepared. The hurricane season will soon be upon us. I just want to inform you from the Community Service Department that there are 2 barrels downstairs. The brown one next to the kitchen is for foodstuff, and the blue one by the sink, by the women's bathroom, that is for toiletries and things such as towels and blankets, etc. So I just want to inform you of the work which we, the community service here at Caveville, will be embarking on for this quarter. So I want to thank you in advance for your cooperation. Remember the toiletries and foodstuff. Thank you.
I have another promotion by Brother Henderson Wiltshire.
Good morning, church. Okay. On behalf of the Women's Ministries leader, Sister Valley, and myself, I would like to thank those persons who came out on the 30th of March when we had a social event out in Whole Town. We had over 40 persons attending. Including 2 persons from the community. There were some persons who wanted to come, but they couldn't make it for one reason or another, but we did have a very good time. For the men, for sure, we discussed some interesting topics, and we found that we have some things in common, even if we never had a chance to discuss them before, but we did have a good time. I know the ladies have a good time as well, so we were at separate places, and then we met up at Trent's Pastor. So I just want to thank all of those who came out, and for those who didn't make it, you missed a really good time. We have another couple of activities coming up. The next one will be Mechanics 101. We have a set date for that, an evening where we will come out with Brother Timothy and Pastor Blackman, that are 2 resident mechanics. So persons who want to learn a little bit more about your vehicle, and one lady also says she's going to bring her vehicle to get fixed as well, but that's okay. So we announced the date for that evening, where we invite you to come out to learn a little bit more about your vehicle, and this will be, again, a promotion on behalf of the men, but we also want ladies to come out as well. And there are other activities that we're going to be having throughout the year, like we spirit and God willing, so as soon as they come up, time for them, we'll let you know. So once again, thank you very much for coming out on the 30th, and we look forward to your continued support as we promote the church's programs in terms of men's fellowship and women's ministry, and indeed the entire church. Thank you. Oh, yes, there will be a prayer walk and breakfast on the 28th of this month. We'll be meeting at Farley Hill at approximately 5 o'clock in the morning. And we'll take a walk from Farley Hill down to the bottom and back up, or vice versa. But that's on the 28th of this month. So we look forward to the church's support again for that activity. Thank you.
Okay, we have some greetings from Brother Johan. He sends his greetings to the church. Also, we'd like to congratulate Brother Lomer and Sister Maria on the birth of their daughter. And we would like to thank Brother and Sister Springer for the contribution they made to the church. Please remember to pray for please remember to call and or visit and pray for the sick and shut-ins in our midst. And lastly, do we have any birthdays this past week? No birthdays this past week? Okay, Brother Val celebrates birthday this week. So if you can call and tell him, wish him a happy belated if you haven't before. And these are all the announcements for today. Please have a blessed Sabbath.
Right. Please stand for the call to worship. Our call to worship this morning is taken from Psalm chapter 56 and verse 9 and 10. When I cry unto thee, then shall mine eyes turn back. This I know, for God is for me. In God will I praise his word. In the Lord will I praise his word.
Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. We are thankful, God, for the tremendous opportunity that we have today to say that we are alive in Jesus. We are truly grateful, Lord, to know that you encamp round about those who fear you and you intend to deliver us. And we've come by today, God, to worship you in spirit and in truth. We ask, Lord, that the proceedings hereafter, all that we would have experienced thus far, may be in an effort to join us closer to you and even being more prepared for your soon return. Touch each life today, and may your power be felt. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
You may be seated. Good morning, Cayfield. Good morning, Cayfield. Perfect. I like that. All right. It is indeed a pleasure and a great privilege to be in the presence of God today, is it not? Right. After our hard weeks of toil and labor, it's great that we can enter God's presence to worship him once again, right? So, do we have any visitors today in our midst? Any visitors? Okay, perfect. Please, can you stand and give us your name and where you're from? Pardon? Oh, both from Mount Zion? Uh-huh. Okay, perfect. Any more? Mount Zion as well? Perfect. Okay, can some members close to them please give them a warm Cayfield welcome? Perfect. Yes, when you're greeted by one of us, you're greeted by all of us. All right. We would also like to acknowledge the presence of our Pastor Broom and his wife. Thank you so much for coming to worship with us this morning. So my hope and prayer today is that you will all be touched and blessed by today's proceedings. And yes, you're in store for a real blessing today, all right? So sit back, relax. Not too much though, because we don't want to hear any snoring during the service. But welcome one and all, and please Have a wonderful day. All right. Our hymn of adoration is number 27, number 27. Rejoice, ye pure in heart.
Rejoice, ye pure in heart. Rejoice, give thanks and sing. Your festal banner wave on high. The cross of Christ your King. Rejoice, 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 give thanks and sing. Strong as ocean surge its breath, send forth the sturdy hymns of old, the psalms of ancient days. Rejoice, 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 give thanks and sing. With all the angels choir, with all the saints on earth, pour out the strain of joy and bliss to wrap the noblest mirth. Rejoice, 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 give thanks and sing.
Ladies first.
Yes, all the life long, still chanting as we go, from youth to age, by night and day, in gladness and in
Gentlemen, join in at the chorus.
Rejoice, 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 give thanks and sing.
Now, gentlemen, verse 5.
The Lord who we adore, the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost, one God forevermore. Rejoice, rejoice, give thanks and sing.
Our scripture reading this morning is taken from Jeremiah chapter 29. Jeremiah chapter 29, and we're reading from verses 11 to 13, sorry. So I will read the first verse, y'all will read the second, and then we will read verse 13 together. Okay? Okay? Perfect. Okay, good. For I know the thoughts that I think toward you, saith the Lord, thoughts of peace and not of evil, to give you an expected end. And ye shall seek me. And ye shall seek me and find me when ye shall search for me with all your heart. May God add a blessing to the readers and the reading of his holy word.
Hymn number 477. Number 477. Come ye disconsolate, where'er ye languish. Come to the mercy seat, fervently kneel. Here bring your wounded hearts. Here tell your anguish. Earth has no sorrow that heaven cannot heal. It's a time for prayer this morning. Together, let's sing. Come ye disconsolate, where ye languish, come to the mercy seat, fervently kneel. Here bring your wounded hearts, here tell your anguish. Earth has no sorrow that heaven cannot heal. Verse 3, here see the bread of life. Here see the bread of life. See waters flowing forth from the throne of God, pure from above. Come to the feast of love. Come to the feast of love. Come ever knowing earth has no sorrow that hell can't remove. I invite you to reverently kneel as we pray. Our gracious, loving, eternal God, Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Lord, this morning we realize that there is none like you. There is none beside you. There is no one else but you to whom we can turn, for thou hast the words of eternal life. We come in your presence recognizing, Lord, that you are God and that you love us with an everlasting love. We come recognizing that without you we can do nothing. Without you we'll surely fail. Without you we're merely drifting like ships without a sail. We come into your presence this morning realizing that to whom shall we go? Thou hast the words of eternal life. And so, Father, we come asking you that you would grant us a blessing. Grant us, Lord, your richest blessings. We know that you are a God who can supply all our needs according to your riches and glory in Christ Jesus. And because of your names, we know that you have a blessing for us in every name that you have. Heavenly Father, you are Jehovah Raphael. And if there's anyone in your presence this morning that needs healing, they can look to you for that healing. You are Jehovah Nisi, the Lord our banner. And Father, we can come and be covered by your righteousness. We can be covered by the banner of Jesus Christ. Indeed, Father, you're the God who provides, Jehovah Jireh. And we've seen that in our lives day after day, how you've provided for us, how you've kept us, health-wise and so on. Material-wise, you've granted us blessings, food on our tables, clothes on our backs, homes that we can live in. You've sustained us, dear Father, day by day, and for that we are grateful. Lord, we also want to thank you for the fact that you are our deliverer, our redeemer, our savior, our friend. And Lord, we know that we can come to you this morning. Although we have sinned and fallen short, we've come because you said that we can come boldly to your throne of grace, where we can obtain mercy and find grace to help us in time of need. This morning, Father, your word reminds us that we need to rejoice with those who rejoice and weep with those who weep. And so there are some in our congregation this morning who are weeping because of a loss of loved ones. We ask that even this morning you would be a God of comfort to such persons. Come close to them, dear Lord, and may they not be embittered at you, but may they know that you have a better plan, a greater plan, and may they trust in your plan going forward. There are those who are rejoicing this morning, even Brother Loma and Sister Maria. And Father, we are thankful and we rejoice with them that you have granted them a safe delivery. We pray, God, that you will continue then to strengthen them, continue to be with their little one even this morning, even as she grows and develops and so on. And I ask, Heavenly Father, that you would help them to continue to rejoice and to look to you, knowing that you are a God with whom all things are possible. This morning also, Father, we need to hear a word from you. We've gathered because, Lord, we know that past blessings cannot suffice us. And so we come needing a fresh anointing from you. We need a fresh word from you. And so, Father, disappoint us not. We ask, Lord, that you would move in the scriptures, move in the singing this morning. Even be with the pastor, Lord, even as he breaks the bread of life to us. Hide him behind the cross. And there, Father, touch his lips with a live coal from off the altar of heaven. May even as he speaks to us, we would hear the voice of Jesus. And may our hearts respond with joy and respond with obedience. And now, Heavenly Father, we ask that you would take this service, the rest of this service, into your care, your keeping. And whatever we fail to ask you for, fail not to grant us, because you know the desires of our hearts, and you know what your will is for us as well. And so be it unto us according as you wish and as you will for us. And may we come away rejoicing and go away from your presence today, drawn closer to you and purposing that we would follow you for the rest of our days. We ask in Jesus' name and for his sake. Amen and amen. Hear our prayer, O Lord. Hear our prayer, O Lord. Incline thine ear to us and grant us thy peace. Amen.
We shall now worship the Lord with our gifts. I have showed you all things, how that so laboring ye ought to support the weak and to remember the words of Jesus, the words of Lord Jesus, how he says it is more blessed to give than to receive. The deacons and deaconesses will now wait on us for tithes, offerings, and gifts. Let us pray. Our Father in heaven, this holy Sabbath day, which you have set aside for us to worship and to rest, you have sanctified and blessed this day. You have given us strength through the week where we have toiled, and we pray, dear Lord, that you will be with us as we go through another week. But before you bless us, dear Lord, we are asking your blessings upon the gifts that have been presented to you this morning. And help us, dear Father, that we would always seek you first and know you who is life eternal. So we ask, dear Father, that you would pour your blessings upon this offering. And as it's being spent, it may be to glorify you and to win souls into your eternal kingdom. Through your Son, Jesus, our Lord. Amen. We give thee back thine own, whate'er the gift may be. All that we have is thine alone, our trust, O Lord, from thee.
Please be seated. At this time, we're going to have a very special moment. There is a baby to be dedicated today, and we're going to make use of number 218, when he cometh, to make up his jewels, all his jewels, precious jewels, his loved and his own. Number 218. And at the singing of the hymn, I'm going to invite Clacy and her family, everyone who's here to support her, to come forward as we dedicate this little baby today. When he cometh. When he cometh to make up his jewels, all his jewels, precious jewels, his loved and his own. Like the stars of the morning, his bright crown adorning, they shall shine in their beauty, bright gems for his little children, little children, little children, little children who love their Redeemer are the jewels, precious jewels, his loved and his own. Like the stars of the morning, his bright crown adorning, they shall shine in their beauty, bright gems for his crown. Amen. A beautiful song, yeah? Yes, they shall shine, precious jewels, even for Jesus. I want to thank all of you for coming here today for this very special moment. And you have on my favorite color. I wonder who planned this. We see you in charge of this blue color. Hey, and baby in blue too. Yes? What a beautiful sight. And I'm certain that God is even happy to see you make such a gesture today, knowing that all life comes from God. And we're here today to celebrate life once again. What a day to do it on. The one who's creator, the one who's redeemer. And we're here to celebrate and to give back to him today and say, yes, we acknowledge you as Creator God. And I don't want to make any mistakes, so I'm going to ask you, Clacia, to give the correct pronunciation of all his names so that everyone can hear clearly.
Josiah Kieron Marshall.
All right. Josiah, and that's Josiah with a J-A, J-A-H. So I just making sure that I got it correct, and it's not Joe, but it's Jill. You got that? What's the middle name? And the last name? Okay, just making sure. You got to know this too, you know. Not only me. I wonder if we're related somehow. My mother's last name was Marshall before she became a black man. I'll check it out. So I may have some family here today. Yes. Regardless, we're all family of God. Today, simply God says to you, train up a child in the way he should go. And God says, I guarantee you, this is not by chance or by mistake or by anything else. I guarantee you that he will not depart from it. I'm a living testimony of that. I decided to go wayward ways, but I never lost that which was implanted in me. That is the love of God. And the word of God says, when you lie down, Clacia, teach him about God. When you sit at the table, teach him about God. When you're walking, you took him for any walks yet? Yes, while you're walking, you tell him about God. In every aspect of your life and his life, he must hear about God himself, because he must not only grow in favor with fellow men, but he must also know about God. As a matter of fact, he cannot know how to appreciate who is around him unless he knows God for himself. And so that's my encouragement to you today. I'm talking to you first. I'll get to the others after. You got to train Josiah. And I believe you gave some thought to his name. And it's a powerful name. Yes. I leave for you to do all the research that you want. I'm not going to go into all that. That's a big sermon in itself. But to have a name like Josiah means a lot. Don't mind the spelling, but we're looking at what it really means. And certainly I pray that he will grow even to be a godly Josiah. Certainly God will be pleased with his life. Tell me who you have here with you today.
My mom, my dad, my sister, my grandparents.
Mom, dad, sister, and grandparents. Raise your hand. And this small man here, you leave him out? That's her son, yes. She has 2 boys. And certainly we give God thanks today because we play a role. And notice I said we because I'm coming to myself just now. We all play a role in the development of each child. And certainly they're here today not to say we're just standing here to support you, but in times of need, and even when you don't think that you need something, we're going to be there because we recognize how important Josiah is not only to you, but to God. As a church, we have a role to play. You do it at home, and we support it here at church because we recognize that all aspects matter in the development of each child. And so we have a bouncing, vibrant children's division here. You know of it, yeah, you know of it. And we're looking to ensure that Josiah gets the best development here at the KFL Assembly of Adventist Church. Amen? Okay. And so there's a place for him there. And I encourage you to make every effort possible to ensure that he doesn't miss out on anything at all, because he's going to need it. In times like these, you know what is, you know, hey, I got a preacher here, tell them.
We need a savior.
Yes, in times like these, we need a savior. Be very sure your anchor holds and grips the solid rock. And so we intend and endeavor to do our part, but we invite you to come as often as possible, every time the door opens, to make sure you, Josiah, and everybody get a little Jesus. Yes? It's very, very important. We want to see all of you saved in the kingdom of God. At this point in time, you can all make decisions for yourself. But Josiah is depending upon us because he doesn't know. He's not even probably aware of what's taking place now, but he's depending upon you to show him the way. And so today, it gives us great pleasure to give Josiah back to Jesus and say, Lord, thank you for blessing us with Josiah, because Josiah is going to teach us some valuable lessons, yeah? You start to learn some lessons already from Josiah? So we're just going to come down. We're going to take Josiah. We're going to pray for him and ask a special blessing upon his life, that God would preserve him, give him strength, and even from hereafter that he would be a little servant for God. Yes. I see him sucking his finger. We're going to kneel, and we invite you to bow your heads, close your eyes as we pray. Heavenly Father, we kneel in your presence and with bowed heads even, in awe of who you are. Once again, you've brought life into this world. And we praise you, Father, because we know that what you do is well done. At this moment, Lord, little baby Josiah in my arms is unaware of what this world has to offer, has no idea what is taking place. But certainly, Father, he trusts, even now as a little child, in his mom. I pray, God, that he would find solace in her, but that would even teach him how to find solace in you. As a little baby, Lord, I pray that you would have your guarding hand upon his life, a protective hand upon his life, a healing hand upon his life. I pray, Lord, that all that should come his way would be in an effort, God, for strengthening him for eternity. And even in these tender years right now, that truly he would learn of you. I pray that you would grant Clacia the strength and the patience, all necessary, dear God, to train Josiah and even to bring him up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. I pray for the relatives as well, that as excited as they might be, they would also play a significant role in his life. I'm praying for the church today, that we would consider the precious gems, Lord, that you've given to us, the little lambs, and even, Father, keep them safe, not only here, but in your power for eternity. I pray, God, that whatever the enemy may even have planned for Josiah, that through your power and in your name, these things will be destroyed today. And certainly, Father, your will be accomplished in his life and in the life of all he comes into contact with and with whom he comes into contact with. Your word says, if we don't live and operate as a child, we wouldn't be able to see heaven, because that's what it's calling for, the trust, faith, and love of a child, even to be called heirs to the kingdom of God. And so we take a page from Josiah's book today. As he lays calm in my arms, may we all rest calm in the arms of Jesus. And certainly, Father, when you shall come, save all of us, and Josiah, his family as well. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen.
Can I invite the church clerk to come forward? Sister Valen. Assistant church clerk, sorry.
This morning, I want to present to you Josiah's certificate of dedication. May God continue to bless you as you bless him, and may you bring him up in the nature and admonition of the Lord. Thank you.
And at this time, I invite a representative from the Children's Division to come forward.
Good afternoon, church, and a blessing. Good afternoon, Tracy, to you and your family, and Josiah. On behalf of the Children's Division, I present to you Josiah's first lesson study book. It is 3 lessons, 3 stories for the entire quarter. So you're going to be needed to be reading for an entire month the same story. The challenge here is that each time you read a story to Josiah, your voice must have the same pleasant tone and the same excitement. Because when you think that he's not listening, when you think that it's too difficult, he's understanding everything. Just have a pleasant tone, pray before you read, and use the lesson study book to bring him up according to God's word.
Thank you.
And Sister Heather has held Josiah as an act of her role in the Children's Division that, hey, he's no longer yours all the time, but he's also Heather's and all her helpers downstairs, yes? And she has taken her role gracefully with a smile. Praise the Lord. Thank you so much today for being here, and we're certainly glad to have Josiah here with us. God bless you all. Yes.
An item of special music by Brother Michael Taylor. We would like to thank Brother Michael for that beautiful rendition. At this time, our pastor, no other than our pastor, will speak to us. Congregation, your pastor, your waiting congregation. Thank you.
Thank you, Sister Valley. Pastor, no other than your pastor. Thank you so much for the introductory words. We are here to praise God today. We're here to worship Him. We are here to exhort His name and to let others know that He's alive. Michael, thank you for, here you go, His ministry today to us. We had a grand time listening to him, and he's doing well. I'm telling you. We had a grand time last week doing stewardship. Can anybody tell me what his spiritual gifts are? I outlined 3 just now. I took up the paper to see what they are. Anybody can tell me at least one? His ability is to play the organ. But what's his giftedness? What's his spiritual gift? Huh? Maybe it can be healing. You know, music heals the soul. Could be that. But I know the gift of service. For not only did he play special music, but he played throughout the service to accompany the hymns that were sung. And I'm thankful that God has gifted him in such an area that we can see our youth and young ones growing in grace with God and even giving back to God through the abilities that He has given to them. I say praise God. It says that we are on the right path, we're on the right track because God is calling, young or old, to give back even to Him. So thank you again, Michael. Keep the good work up. Pastor Brome and your wife, thank you for coming to Cave Hill today. It's good to have you in the house and to have your support. And you know that my wife and I, we support you even during this time. And may God's continued grace and comfort be upon you and your family even through this challenging time. And to the members here at Cave Hill, thank you for being here today. For church would not be the same without you. And it's good to see all of you here. And I'm glad that we even have visitors here today too. Yes? Oh yes. Certainly you have made Cave Hill sweeter today by your presence. Thank you for coming. Today, I've been called upon to deliver a message. And I'll tell you why I start this way. Seldom do I ever preach the same sermon at all 3 churches. I think this may be the first time. But the last time God led me to share this message, some person said, you gotta come, you gotta do it again. Because we are in need. And I promise, yes. Next time I'm at Cave Hill, I'm going to give that message. And I pray that the same blessing, and even greater, would be received today as a result to know that Jesus still visits you in Babylon. You believe that? Jesus still visits you in Babylon. So brace yourself today. Jesus is here, but He wants to come to Babylon where you are. He wants to visit you there. He's saying no matter how far, or how far you think it is, or how far you've gone, I can still reach you. You're not out of touch. And so let's bow our heads today as we prepare for the word of God to our hearts. Father in heaven, your word once again is open before us, a lamp to our feet and a light to our path. We can never exhaust your word, Jesus. And so even things that we would have heard and read from small, we can even have a greater appreciation for them now. And certainly, Father, even when we shall see you face to face, we would even have to appreciate seeing you, or talking about seeing Jesus face to face, in a different way, because we don't even know what to expect. But for today, take us on the journey with you. Empower us, I pray, in Jesus' name. Amen. A visit from Jesus in Babylon. Have you ever heard the saying, a promise is a comfort to a fool? Have you ever heard that? There's a song by Gregory Isaacs, and he titles his song the same way. Promise is a comfort to a fool. It is said that this familiar saying is talking about relying on man's word. You can't rely on a person. People will fail you. God is the only one you can trust. I can make promises to you, and I can fall short at times. I can tell you I'll call you, but I forget. I can tell you, okay, I'll pass by you, but something comes up and I don't get the opportunity to, and you're really looking forward to seeing me. And I fall back on my promise. Some people even say, I love you, and I promise I will always love you. Boy, I tell you. But things can change in a flash. People will fail you, but you can always trust in God. In a popular devotion called Our Daily Bread, anybody ever heard about that? I used to watch my mom with those little books, those little white books. She had a stack of them. She used to call them all the time. January 1st, 1985. I was about 2 months old. January 1st, 1985. The author then highlights 12 promises of God, and I want you to tell me if you know them. He highlights Hebrews 13:5, where God says, I will never leave thee, nor forsake thee. He's promising you that his presence will be with you all the time. Genesis 15:1, he says, I am thy shield. In other words, I'm here to protect you. Isaiah 41:10, he says, I will strengthen you. In other words, God says, I have the power to hold you up. I have the power to carry you through. I have the power to sustain you. Hallelujah. Oh, and we need that. Trust me, I need that. In verse 10, he also says, I will help you. In John chapter 10, verse 4, he says, when he putteth forth his own sheep, he goeth before them. God is saying, I'm not leaving you to walk on your own, but I'll walk before you. And you can follow me with even if your eyes are closed, you can just reach out and touch me and know for certain that I'll lead you home at last. Trust me. Jeremiah 29, he says, I know the thoughts that I think toward you. Thoughts they're not of evil, to give you an expected end. God has a purpose for your life. What's that purpose? To save you by all means. I tell you, if there's one thing that God is about, is He's going to save you. He wants to save you. He's all about saving you. His purpose is to save you not only now, but for eternity. Matthew 11:28, He says, "Come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest." In other words, God is saying you can rest safely in me. Cast all your care upon me because I care for you. Don't worry. Take no thought for tomorrow. Let tomorrow think for itself. Trust me. In 1 John 1:9, he says, if we confess our sins, He's faithful. He says He's just to forgive our sins and to cleanse from all unrighteousness. God promises you perfect cleansing today. Hallelujah. And in verse 11 of Psalm 84, he says, no good thing will I withhold from them that work uprightly. Hallelujah. God says, I'm not holding back anything from you, but He says, you've got to walk in me. You've got to talk in me. You've got to live in me. You know, He's so good that even though we don't live in Him and talk of Him and walk with Him, He still extends goodness to us. Boy, I tell you. But He's calling us today to walk uprightly. 1 Samuel 12:22, the Lord will not forsake His people for His great name's sake. God is faithful. I got one amen for that. God is faithful. He says in Psalm 25 verse 9, the meek will I guide. He's a guiding light. And in Romans 8:28, he says, all things work together for good to them that love God and are called according to His purpose. God has a wise plan for us. Hallelujah. And so these are promises that we can hold on to. You know, but sometimes it gets hard, you know. When the time gets rough, we tend to forget these promises sometimes. Or we know them well. We have them down pat, they're right there. But when circumstances come, somehow we forget these promises. But I call you today to stand on the promises of God. Hold on to the promises of God. The author says, hold fast to that which you have, that no man take your crown. In other words, hold on to Jesus and hold on to the place that He has positioned you in. Because you could very well lose your space. We are in 2019. Today's date is April 13th. I just wanted to make sure I was correct. Sometimes you get a little mixed up and you forget the dates. Happens only to me or to you sometimes? Yes. Things can get a bit hectic and you forget which day it is. But I remember the Sabbath though. I may forget Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, but I know when the Sabbath comes. It just feels different. When I was in Trinidad, even the birds knew when the Sabbath was. I came out on mornings, early 6 o'clock Sabbath morning sometimes, and took a walk on campus, and the birds operated different on Sabbath. But we're here in 2019. And many individuals, might I even say here today, are asking certain questions. Why does God allow bad things to happen to good people? You ever ask yourself that question? Have you ever asked God that question? Have you ever asked, what is God up to? Why won't He answer my request? I'm consistently praying to Him. Why is God letting me suffer? Why are there so many difficult people in my life? Ay, ay, ay. Have you ever asked that question? I heard somebody say mercy. Why am I still struggling with that same stubborn sin? Why am I stuck in this boring job? I see people smiling. You ever ask that question? What, if anything at all, is God doing with my life? Now, that was a big question of mine. I needed to know, God, what are you doing in my life? What's the purpose that you have for me? It's a ploy of the enemy to have us believe that we are alone in this life and that we are the only one going through struggles and turmoil. You know that? Sometimes we feel it is only me in this thing. We feel as though nobody else seems, well, they're smiling, they're walking nice, and it just seems like I am the only person experiencing pain and suffering. And it's a ploy of the enemy to have us believe that we are alone in this thing. I want to let you to know today, based on the promises of God, that God says, I am with you. And I will never leave you nor forsake you. I will be faithful to you because I've promised with my life. Christ said in Revelation, therefore, Revelation 12 verse 12, rejoice ye heavens, and ye that dwell in them. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea, for the devil is come down unto you, having great wrath, because he knoweth that he hath but a short time. The Bible says, rejoice ye heavens, and ye that dwell in them. But the Bible says, woe to the inhabitants. I believe that includes you and I. Not only the inhabitants of the earth, but in the sea. So he ain't leaving out the ocean here. As long as you are down here, the enemy has come down with great wrath, because he knows he hath but a short time. So Jesus says, you are not alone. If you're on this earth, we're in it together. I'm glad you said amen. Because I'm not alone in this thing. I have you. I can call upon you. If there's something going on in my life, there are persons that I can call who can still give me a word of encouragement. I heard Brother Loma testify Wednesday night. He says, if anyone ever says that the church doesn't care, they lie. Because I can see that the church cares. I can see that persons are interested in your well-being. I can see that someone is thinking about me and my family. And so we are not alone. Hallelujah. We are here together, and we have Jesus in the vessel. Verse 17 says, of Revelation 12, and the dragon was wroth with the woman, and went to make war with the remnant of her seed, which keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus. This doesn't sound very individual to me. If you are on the earth, trouble is coming your way, because the devil is coming for you. His intention is to seek to kill and to destroy. But if you are a part of God's remnant church, Revelation 12:17 says, based on your commitment to God to keep his commandments and the testimony of Jesus, which is even the spirit of prophecy, if you commit to this and these identifying marks, you have just signed up for war. I don't know if you ever thought about it like that. But you're literally saying, bring it on, Satan. Because I'm on a winning side. And you are on a losing side. And the word of God says to me that you will bruise his heel, but ultimately he will crush your head. And I prefer to be on the side of Jesus. So if you count yourself to be a part of God's last day remnant church, you have signed up for war. But we love to complicate things, you know. You know that? Or you didn't know that? Okay, well, let me see if I can help you out. Nothing is wrong with having a nice, adequate home. Huh? A nice house. But there's some people who just want an elaborate house. By then they recognize who's going to clean it. Huh? Boy, I tell you, if you have a little cozy little house, yes, everybody's close by, it's hard to clean. So when you got 14 rooms, huh? It's harder to clean, but we complicate it a little bit, yeah? For Brother Timothy, here is he, Webster. Yes. Nothing is wrong with a standard car. Huh? But the fellas saying, oh man, that's too slow. I'm going to turbocharge it. Right, Morris? Want more speed, man. We complicate it a little bit. But you got the brakes to stop it, you know. Got to make sure it can stop. It's all right to have the speed, but if you can't stop it, you're in serious trouble. I don't know how many of you have ever experienced brake failure. It's not a good feeling, you know. To mash that pedal and realize that it go to the floor and the car don't slow down. Boy! If you never wet your pants before, let me leave that one there. Nothing is wrong with a simple wedding. But people said, oh boy, I gotta get extravagant, I gotta pull all the stops, I gotta do all this, I gotta do all of that, this is only one day and I gotta do it the best of my ability. After the day is gone, and everyone has enjoyed themselves, and you have had the best day of your life, there's a constant reminder each month that you have something to pay back. And that can go on for years. Complications, I tell you. The boys say the pants is too baggy. Talking to these three young boys here, these three boys say, pants too baggy. Huh? You see, they're laughing at me there now, huh? Pants too baggy, man. I see fellas taking the pants themselves. You can see the rough stitching, man. You can see it. But then there's problems getting it off. When I was in university, a guy in my room asked me to help him get off a pants. I said, boy, this is a strange thing here you calling me to do. Never in my life have I ever been in a position like this, and I don't want to be ever again. He got it on, but to get it off, it couldn't get past the ankle. And he didn't have a small foot like mine, like a size 8.5. He was up 13. So get it past the ankle is one thing, but to get it off the foot, I left him still trying. I don't know what was the outcome. I believe he got it off because he wasn't wearing it the next day. But I don't know how he got it off. Jaws of life? Maybe. Before, you used to hear the girls say, I can wear a short pants. Huh? Now they call it something else. Renella, you will help me? Huh? But it must drop out now. Huh? It used to be short before, but they have complicated it. At birth, you were either male or female. I'm talking to you today. Now, they're saying you can put an X until the person or the child or whoever grows to decide who they want to be. Brother Bob, you know, you could have looked at the lady and you would tell whether it's a boy or a girl. Sometimes based on how the stomach formed, they used to say, well, you know, if it's pointy, maybe a boy. Depending on how the stomach dropped, maybe a girl. They could tell back then by looking, yeah? And they didn't too far off. As time progressed, they brought in ultrasounds and you can look on the screen now and based on the formation and what you see and how you, oh, it's a boy. Your test carried out to determine male or female. But now we are at this stage where they're saying the child will choose when it is ready. So just put X there. Oh, we love to complicate things. I was born a boy. I will remain a boy. Grow to be a man, get old and remain a man, and I will die a man. And my documents will always say that I am a man. You will not put X on any documents of mine. And if the good Lord blesses with me with children, I am putting the X there neither. Because I say God has made a plan from the very beginning, but somehow mankind does complicate things. Complicate things all the time. For Israel, it probably wasn't enough to be just inhabitants of the earth. It probably wasn't enough to be called and chosen by God. It probably wasn't enough being commandment-keeping people and having the testimony of Jesus. They just had to complicate things. Israel, boy, I tell you. In the book of Jeremiah, from which our scripture reading comes, Jeremiah is faced with delivery of serious prophetic messages to Israel and pagan nations. He warned against bold-faced disloyalty to God and warned them of impending judgment and punishment. Listen carefully, Jeremiah 2, verse 4 to 9. You want to turn there? Sure, go ahead. Jeremiah chapter 2, verse 4 to 9. And it says, hear ye the word of the Lord. Jeremiah talking to them now. O house of Jacob, and all the families of the house of Israel, thus saith the Lord, what iniquity your fathers found in me, that they are gone far from me and have walked after vanity and are become vain. Neither said they, where is the Lord that brought us up out of the land of Egypt, that led us through the wilderness, through the land of deserts and of pits, through a land of drought and of the shadow of death, through the land that no man passeth through, and where no man dwelt. And I brought you into a plentiful country to eat the fruit thereof and the goodness thereof. But when ye entered, ye defiled my land, and made mine heritage an abomination. The priests said not, Have mercy. The priest didn't even say, "Where is the Lord?" And they that handle the law knew not me, the pastors. Ay, ay, ay. I like it when God speaks to me clear and he calls me by office, by calling too. He says, the pastors also transgressed against me, and the prophets prophesied by Baal, and walked after the things that do not profit. Wherefore, I will yet plead with you, saith the Lord, and with your children's children will I plead. Sounds like a merciful God? Huh? What kind of people it sound like to you? It gets worse. It gets worse. Jeremiah chapter 3, starting at verse 6. Just the next chapter, Jeremiah 3, verse 6. The Lord said unto me in the days of Josiah the king. Josiah is gone. Hast thou seen that which backsliding Israel hath done? She is gone up every high mountain and under every green tree, and there hath played the harlot. And I said after she had done all these things, turn thou unto me, but she returned not, and her treacherous sister Judah saw it. And I saw when for all the causes whereby backsliding Israel committed adultery, I had put her away and given her a bill of divorce. Yet her treacherous sister Judah feared not, but went and played the harlot also. We talking about heathens and pagans here? Who we talking about here? God's chosen people. And I saw, verse 8, for all the causes whereby backsliding Israel committed adultery, I had put her away, given a bill of divorce. Yet her treacherous sister Judah feared not, but went and also played the harlot. And it came to pass through the likeness of her whoredom that she defiled the land and committed adultery with the stones and with the stocks. And yet for all this her treacherous sister Judah hath not turned unto me with her whole heart, but feignedly, saith the Lord. And the Lord said unto me, the backsliding Israel hath justified herself more than treacherous Judah. Go and proclaim these words towards the north, and say, return thou, backsliding Israel, saith the Lord, and I will cause mine anger to fall upon you, for I am merciful. I will cause not my anger to fall upon you, for I am merciful, saith the Lord. I will not keep anger forever. Only acknowledge thine iniquity, God says, that thou hast transgressed against the Lord thy God, and hast scattered thy ways to the strangers under every green tree, and ye have not obeyed my voice, saith the Lord. Turn, he says, O backsliding children, saith the Lord, for I am married unto you. Oh boy. And I will take you, one of a city, and two of a family, and I will bring you to Zion, and I will give you pastors according to mine heart, which shall feed you with knowledge and understanding. Sounds like a merciful God? Oh boy. But it sounds like a serious set of people that he's dealing with here. Jeremiah 18 verse 12. And they said, there is no hope, but we will walk after our own devices, and we will everyone do the imagination of his evil heart. This is God's people, God's chosen people, the ones God chose to represent him on earth, the ones who were to set the pace and the standard, who are now saying to God, we will walk after our own devices, and everyone we will do the imaginations of our own heart. We will do things our own way. Have mercy, O Lord. We may say that we are not like Israel, but let me ask a few questions. Are we truly testifying of the goodness of God to us as a people? Are we truly letting the world know how good God is and all that He has done for us? Are we truly representing God here on earth? Are we letting the dying world know that Jesus still saves by the way that we live? Secondly, are you letting your children know how good God has been to you, or are you hiding certain stories from them? I'll pause there for a little bit. I believe that it's a fear of most parents not to highlight certain things in fear the children have a different perception of mommy or daddy. Ever had that fear? I will have to ask the parents. Ever had that fear before? And so you choose to withhold certain things from them as opposed to tell them the truth. I was sinking deep in sin, far from the peaceful shore, very standing deep within, sinking to rise no more. But the master of the sea heard my despairing cry from the waters, hallelujah, lifted me now. So I'll tell you who I was before. I'll let you know the mistakes that I made. But I'll let you know, had it not been for Jesus, had it not been for the saving grace of God, if I didn't listen to the voice of God, I would not be here today. Are we walking in our own ways and doing things how we feel to do it? I believe if we answer these questions honestly, we have been like Israel at some point. Maybe we can be behaving like Israel right now. And only God knows what will happen in the future. In Jeremiah 29 verse 4, God says, "Thus saith the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, unto all that are carried away captives, whom I have caused to be carried away from Jerusalem unto Babylon." The prophet informed the exiles that their being in captivity at that time was not contrary to God's will, and that they should accept quietly their fate and make the best of the situation. God is the one who has carried you away and allowed you to be in captivity. The Word of God says, "Whom I have caused to be carried away from Jerusalem into Babylon." Really? God caused them to be carried away into captivity? You see, God is so merciful that He allows us to go after the things we want, even though it hurts Him tremendously. Are you with me? God has a purpose for our lives. There's a will that He has in place. But how often do we do things our way? And we are adamant about it, and God still allows us to have it, even though it hurts Him. Sometimes these things hold us in bondage. They keep us captive. There were false prophets trying to make the people believe in a lie that captivity would only last for 2 years. But Jeremiah had to remind them of God's words in verse 11, Jeremiah 25, verse 11. "And this whole land shall be a desolation, and an astonishment. And these nations shall serve the king of Babylon 70 years. There were persons advocating, oh, God is good, man. He ain't gonna last too long. 2 years and 2 years tops and this will be over. God says 70 years. You will remain under Babylonian rulership. Sometimes we would love to get away from the circumstances around us. We would love to change things, go back in time, do things differently. However, the 70 years here indicated seeks to suggest that sometimes we may have to spend a lifetime in bondage. It's appointed a man how long to live? Talk to me. It's appointed how much for a man to live? 70, 70 years. And God here is saying, listen, that which is taking place can sometimes take a lifetime because of certain choices. Because you have made certain decisions, even though it hurt me, sometimes you have to spend a lifetime there. There's some things that I would love to go back in the past and change, but I can't do it. I have to live with that for the rest of my life. Can't change it. But, hallelujah, I'm so glad that Jesus still visits us in Babylon. Woohoo! Even though my decisions can keep me in a lifetime worth of mess, God still visits me there. Verse 10 of chapter 29, Jeremiah. Jeremiah 29, verse 10. Hear what the Lord says. For thus saith the Lord, that after 70 years be accomplished at Babylon, I will visit you. Hallelujah. And perform my good word toward you in causing you to return to this place. God says, I'm not going to forget you. My promise was, you're going to spend 70 years there. You may spend a lifetime there, but after that, I'm coming back for you. I know it's not only me, you know. But you have been bound sometimes. You have been held captive sometimes. And God has allowed certain things to take place in life. But what the enemy may mean for bad, God is saying you got to look at the positives now. You've got to make sure that you look at these as stepping stones. Because while they may seem unfortunate, know that I will come back to visit you. I will never leave you. I will never forsake you. I will perform my good will to you. You will know that I am God because you will feel me present. For the word of God says that after all of this, John says, I saw a new heaven and a new earth. The first heaven, the first earth were passed away. There was no more sea. And I, John, saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down from God out of heaven, prepared as a bride, adorned for her husband. And I heard a great voice out of heaven saying, behold, the tabernacle of God is with men, and he will dwell with them, and they shall be his people, and God himself shall be with them and be their God. God shall wipe away. Hallelujah. Woo! You may have cried for a lifetime. But God says, I will wipe all tears from their eyes. There will be no more death, neither sorrow, nor crying, neither shall there be any more pain, for the former things are passed away. And he that sat on the throne said, behold, hallelujah, I make all things new. And he said unto me, write, for these words are true, they're faithful. He said unto me, it is done. I am Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end. I will give unto him that is athirst of the fountain of the water of life freely. He that overcometh, hallelujah. I believe there are some overcomers in here today. He that overcometh shall inherit all things, and I will be his God, and he shall be my son. Praise the Lord, that even while I am in Babylon, God will still visit me there. God says, after 70 years be accomplished, at Babylon I will visit you and perform my good word toward you in causing you to return to this place, for I know the thoughts that I think towards you. You see, you may think that the situation is unfortunate, and you may think that you're being punished and that God is tearing God ready for you. But God is saying, listen, I know the thoughts that I think towards you. While the experience in Babylon may be rough, I know the thoughts that I think towards you. While you are going through a lifetime of bondage, I know the thoughts I think towards you. They are thoughts of peace. Hallelujah. Not of evil, because these things will work out for your good, and they will give you an expected end. Not only does Jesus say, I will visit you, but I'm thankful that he still hears prayers coming from Babylon. So you don't have to wait until you get out of problems to talk to God. Even while you're in situations, you can call out to God. Hear what verse 13 says, 12 and 13. Then shall ye call upon me. Hallelujah. I'm thankful that persons will still call out to Jesus. You call upon me, and you shall go and pray unto me, and I will hearken unto you. You shall seek me and find me when you search for me with all your heart. If there's one thing that I know, circumstances sometimes, not sometimes, most of the time, if not all the times, push you towards God. When things get rough and things get hard, those who never bawl out the name of God, just bawl it out quick, you know. God, have mercy. If they never called on Jesus before, or that you would hear them cry out to Jesus. The circumstances that we go through because of certain choices we make, God allows them to happen because he knows ultimately they will lead you back to him. Because he knows the thoughts he thinks towards you. And his intention is to visit you. But he says, you've got to call upon me. You've got to go and pray to me. And you will seek me when you find me. When you search with all your heart. When God says he knows the thoughts he thinks towards you, it's important to know whom he means by you. Christians often apply Jeremiah's promise to themselves individually. And we tell ourselves, boy, God knows what he's doing to me. And I'm glad that he has good thoughts to me. But it would be very self-centered if I just take it for myself. Jeremiah's promise coming from God should not be taken individually. It is not a private promise. It is for the entire church. The you in I know the plans I have for you refers to the whole people of God. He's speaking to all of Israel. He's talking to his remnant people. And he's saying, I know the thoughts I think and I have towards you. Before thinking about what the promise means for you, think about what the promise means for us. In Jeremiah's case, the promise of return was for the whole community of exiles. In the case of the church, the promise of salvation in Christ is for the whole community of believers. The promise is for all of us today. This is the essence of the divine message for the exiles. A shaft of light pierces the gloom of their present situation when the Lord says he has plans for their future, but realization of these plans was contingent upon their attitude. You can only appreciate the sentiments of the promise given if your attitude towards God is in the right place. If you see God as the punishing God, you're going to approach his grace differently. If you think that what he's doing is to tear you down, you're going to appreciate what he's saying to you differently. But if your attitude is correct, you will appreciate when he says, I know the thoughts that I have towards the church here at Cave Hill. They're thoughts of peace. They're not thoughts of evil, to give an expected end. The passing of the years would tend to encourage among them a right disposition towards the Lord. You know, you would have seen when you were with the Lord, and you see when you were without the Lord. And now you're in a position where you're without the Lord, and God says a promise to you and says, I will visit you. You appreciate when you were with the Lord more. And you want to get back to the Lord. One's attitude determines a lot. It's one of obediently waiting on the will of God, as opposed to the automatic claim that we are the remnant, and so the Lord is on our side. I am a Seventh-day Adventist, so I must be saved. He ain't got no choice but to save me because I'm a Seventh-day Adventist. It works like that. If there are 5 distinct thoughts as we close that should be gleaned from today's message, there should be these 5 things. Number 1, God thinks. Hallelujah. I'm glad that I have a thinking God. Number 2, God thinks of us. Number 3, what God thinks of us is of great importance. Number 4, God thinks thoughts of peace concerning us. And number 5, God's thoughts of peace will be ultimately realized. I'll give them to you again. Number 1, God thinks. Number 2, God thinks of us. Number 3, what God thinks of us is of great importance. Number 4, God thinks thoughts of peace concerning us. And number 5, God's thoughts of peace will be ultimately realized. For whether you want to admit it or not, God says that every knee will bow and every tongue will have to confess that He is Lord. Whether a person wants to accept it now or not, everyone will have to say that God is a good God, and He has been a merciful God, and that He has been a loving God, and that all He tried to do was to save us. Aren't you glad that Jesus visits people in Babylon? Boy, I tell you, I'm glad that Jesus came to Babylon for me. I'm glad that He spent the time to find me in Babylon. He said, you choose to go that way, go ahead, my boy. Experience it for some time. I'm going to come back and I'm going to visit you though. But while I was in Babylon, I recognized the errors of my ways, and I called upon God, and He heard my cry, because I searched for Him with all my heart, because I recognized, like a prodigal son, I had walked away from loving arms and walked into treacherous arms, and now I see that God has always been loving me. So what do? I go back to Him. And that's all He was asking Israel to do. Come back to me. Your first love. Come back to me. I've seen your ways. Come back to me though. So I'm glad that God still visits people in Babylon. I'm happy that He hears from Babylon. There is no place, the psalmist says, that you can go from God's presence. If you're up there, He's there. If you're down there, He's there. God still hears your prayers. There may be somebody here today thinking that God is not hearing your prayers. God still hears your prayers. God makes it plain that He can do nothing for His people unless they seek Him with sincerity of purpose. You got to want God. He's made Himself available for you. But you've got to want God and sincerely want it. And with a heartfelt, boy, I tell you, your heart must be yearning for God. As the deer, thank you, Brother Lionel, pants for the water, so my soul pants after you. My question is, won't you call from Babylon today? I tell you. As we get ready for prayer, there may be some situations that you have in life today. God is saying, I'm coming to Babylon to visit you. I'm taking a walk down the road, and I'm coming right in the heat of your situation. You think that Hebrew boy story is just a hoax? We want to jump out the fire. But God is saying, I want to come in the fire and stand with you. I'm coming to Babylon to visit you. And there are some situations that we may be in, And we may believe that God is just leaving us to suffer. You can't find your way out. Today, God is calling you. And He's saying, I can visit you there. But I'll also hear your prayers when you call with all your heart. Where's Mikel? Mikel is gone. Pass me not. I heard him play it before. Pass me not, O gentle Savior. Hear my humble cry while on others, God, you are calling. Don't pass me by. And God is calling you today to change your outlook on the situation. And He's asking you just simply to lay your fight to rest and just trust me that I know the thoughts I think towards you, thoughts of peace, not of evil, to give you an expected end. Pass me not. Here. Oh, while Jesus do sing, say, oh, say, please hear. Oh, oh, do if you feel as though today you may be in Babylon right now, seems like a lifetime, and you're trusting God with your outcome today, I want you to stand where you are and just join me at the front. We're going to pray. I want to pray for you today. There's some situation and a Babylonian experience. Something is tough. Something is going on. It seems like you're in bondage. You're calling out to Jesus today. Savior, Savior. I'm calling you in sincerity, Jesus. Please hear me. I know it's rough, Jesus. I know. But I'm trusting you with the outcome, Jesus. I feel as though I'm in Babylon. I feel it, Jesus. You're saying, Jesus, thank you for your visit today, Jesus. Thank you. Thy merit I seek thy face. Heal my wounded, broken. Heal us, Jesus, today. Save us by your grace. Singing, save. Savior, oh yes. Jesus is hearing you today. Jesus do? Let's pause there for a minute. Now I want to let you know that this is not just a compartmental touch that Jesus is willing to do today. He's being holistic about this thing. He wants to minister physically. He wants to minister spiritually. He wants to minister emotionally, psychologically, socially. God wants to touch every aspect of your life today. And he's saying, I can bring you from out of Babylon. But he's saying, just trust me, I know the thoughts I think towards you. They're thoughts of peace. I will never have an evil thought towards you, because I'm about to bring about an expected end. So open your hearts to Jesus today. May the attitude that follows from today be one receptive to God's power. And may it be a heart experience today as well. Your heads are bowed. Your eyes are closed. Our Father in heaven, your word has always been a lamp to our feet and a light to our path. In our lives, things can get cloudy at times, and we may even doubt your presence, God, but your word reassures us, Father, that the righteous will never be forsaken, nor the seed begging bread. And so today, Lord, help us to claim the promises of Jesus. Even as we contemplate on who we are, but more so who you are, may we find solace in knowing that every single thought that passes through the mind of Jesus is a thought of peace, to bring healing to our souls, but more so to save us for eternity. Whatever we may be going through today, Father, your word says these light afflictions are but for a moment. They may seem to be a lifetime, but you said it's just for a moment. And even after that, you've promised, God, that you will come back for us. That where you are, there we may be also. Help us, God, to remain faithful. Help us not to take our hands off the plow. Help us not to reject you, Lord. But help us always to turn to you. Persons have come to the altar today, Father, because they're letting go. They're asking for your power. They're asking you, God, for your deliverance. They're asking God for sustenance. They're asking God for the way forward. Mark the way, pave the way, God. Walk before me, because I no longer want to walk by sight, but I want to walk by faith. Hear your children's cry today. But most of all, Father, hear the church's cry today. You are the head of this church. You said we are the apple of your eye. and you love us with an everlasting love. May we receive that special blessing today to know that we are the children of God. And if children, then heirs, and even joint heirs with Christ. May we accept our new name today. Not just sinners, but sinners saved by grace. Even saints, you even call us your friends. Touch your people. Restore us, Father. We need you more than ever. And so visit us today and even hereafter. Hear our prayer in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. As we go back, we sing the chorus. Singing Savior, say, oh, hear my humble cry. Yes, while on others Jesus, do not pass me by. Oh, do not pass me by. Praise the Lord. I'm glad that Jesus visited us today. And I'm glad that you received from him today. Trust me, I did. And certainly, may our lives be never the same again because we have met Jesus. God bless you. Enjoy the remainder of the Sabbath.
This afternoon, we would like to thank our pastor for the message. And let us remember that God is with us always, even when we are in bondage, even when we are in the war. And as we go from here this afternoon, let us not take this message only for ourselves, but let us tell someone about what God has done for us and what he is doing for us. Our closing hymn is number 633, 633, When We All Get to Heaven.
After such a wonderful sermon, this is appropriate that we sing this song as though sing the wondrous love of Jesus, sing his mercy and his grace. In the mansion bright and blessed, he prepared for us a place. Oh, when we all get to heaven, what a day of rejoicing that will be. When we all see Jesus, we will sing and shout the victory. While we walk the pilgrim's pathway, clouds will overspread the sky. But when traveling days are over, not a shadow nor the sun. Oh, when we all get to heaven, what a day rejoicing that will be. When we all see Jesus, we will sing and shout for victory. Let us then be true and faithful, trusting, serving every day. Just one glimpse of Him in glory will the toys of life prepare. When we all get to heaven, what a day rejoicing that will be. When we all see Jesus, we will sing and shout for victory. Onward to the prize before us, soon His beauty will. Oh, soon the pearly gates will open. We shall. Oh, when we all get to heaven, what a day of rejoicing that will be. When we all see Jesus, we will sing and shout the victory.
Okay, just before we pray and we give God thanks for the offering and even the benediction, remember, camp meeting starts Wednesday evening next week, and the services at Oberry will be streamed right here to the Cave Hill Seventh-day Adventist Church. So from Wednesday evening through to Sabbath, all the services will be streamed here to the church. Very importantly, on Friday night, the National Church, the conference will be in communion service. The service will also be streamed, and we will be participating here at Cave Hill as well in the communion service and following with them as they do the foot washing, as they break bread, as they drink the wine. We will be participating together with the church. Even at Oberry, the district, the National Church will be in communion Friday night, and even as we prepare for the service on Sabbath. So bear those things in mind. The service will be streamed to Cave Hill and to all the churches. The churches have the downlink sites. This is a preparation for the Good News campaign coming up in May, on May 19th. And communion service will be Friday night here at the Cave Hill Church. So we expect to see all of you here as we have the Lord's Supper. Thank you so much.
Let us bow our heads for the closing prayer. O thou in whose presence my soul take delight, in whom in affliction I call, my comfort by day and my song in the night, my hope, my salvation, my all. Our God and our Father who art in heaven, we thank you for the blessing that you have bestowed upon us this day. We thank you, Lord, for the time spent in your presence. And we ask you, Lord, that as we go from day to day, we will live out these things in our daily lives. We thank you, Lord, once again for our pastor, a young man, God, but you have bring him to your fold for such a time as this. And help there, Lord, that as he go on, that you would send your Holy Spirit to be with him, so that he will be able to win souls for your kingdom. As we prepare to leave here this afternoon, dear God, I ask you to take us to our homes in peace and in safety. And if it be your will, bring us back here this afternoon where we can receive another blessing. I ask you, Lord, that you would bless the education offering. Help, dear God, that it would go to further the studies of our boys and girls, so that when we, the older ones, have passed on, that they will take up your message and they would be there to tell someone about your love and your soon coming. So into your merciful hands, dear Father, I commit each and every one of us here born in your presence. And I ask you that you would continue blessing us, because I ask these mercies with thanksgiving in no other name but thine. Amen.